The psychology of people who never gossip. There is a distinct, almost unnerving quality to the person who refuses to gossip. A subtle disruption in the social fabric that occurs when someone declines the invitation to speak ill of another, effectively halting the flow of social currency that most of us trade in without a second thought. In every workplace, friend group, or family gathering, there is an invisible market where connection is purchased through shared judgment, where we bond by identifying a common enemy or by dissecting the flaws of those not present. Yet the individual who never gossips stands outside this economy entirely, looking on with a gaze that is often misinterpreted as arrogance, detachment, or even secrecy. Have you ever tried to share a juicy piece of information with someone, expecting the usual widening of eyes and eager leaning in, only to be met with a neutral expression and a silence that felt like a mirror reflecting your own pettiness back at you? Or perhaps you are the one who feels a physical recoil when the conversation turns to slander, sensing an immediate drop in the room's energy that others mistake for excitement, while you recognize it as a cheap and fleeting form of intimacy. To understand the psychology of people who never gossip, we must look beyond the simple label of being nice and explore the complex cognitive architecture of an individual who has mastered the art of emotional containment, a person who values the integrity of their own mind more than the temporary approval of the crowd. At the core of the non-gossiper's psychology is a fundamental rejection of what evolutionary psychologists call social grooming, the verbal equivalent of primates picking bugs off one another to establish alliances, and hierarchy, a mechanism that, while natural, is often rooted in insecurity and the need for external validation. For the chronic gossiper, the act of talking about others is a way to triangulate, to create a us against them dynamic that temporarily soothes their anxiety about their own social standing. But the person who never gossips operates from an internal locus of evaluation, meaning their sense of self-worth is not derived from their position relative to others, but from an internal code of conduct that views speech as a creative act rather than a destructive one. This is not to say they are devoid of judgment. They are often the most observant people in the room, but they possess a high degree of impulse control and self-monitoring, traits associated with the personality dimension of conscientiousness in the Big Five model, which allows them to filter their thoughts through a sieve of utility and kindness before those thoughts ever reach their tongue. They understand intuitively that gossip is a form of borrowed power, a way of feeling superior without having to demonstrate actual superiority, and they refuse to engage in this theft because they know that the intimacy built on the ruins of someone else's reputation is structurally unsound and destined to collapse. However, there is a deeper, more strategic layer to this behavior that touches upon the concept of informational asymmetry and personal power, because the person who listens but does not speak eventually becomes the holder of all secrets while revealing none of their own. In the realm of dark psychology and strategic maneuvering, silence is often weaponized. But for the genuine non-gossiper, this silence is a form of protection, a boundary that keeps their inner world uncontaminated by the chaotic energies of others' dramas. They recognize the triangle of drama, a psychological model describing the roles of victim, persecutor, and rescuer, and they steadfastly refuse to step onto that stage, knowing that once you engage in gossip, you have accepted a role that can be flipped at any moment, turning you from the confidant into the target. This refusal to engage creates a sense of safety around them, a psychological vault quality that draws people in, leading others to trust them deeply with sensitive information because they have proven through their silence that they are not conduits for social pollution. Yet, this can also isolate them, as gossip is the primary bonding agent for many superficial relationships. By opting out, they are implicitly rejecting the phatic communion, the small talk meant to signal, "I am like you," which can make them appear intimidating or holier than thou to those who rely on gossip to feel connected. Furthermore, the psychology of the non-gossiper is deeply entwined with a high capacity for cognitive empathy, the ability to not just feel for another, but to intellectually understand their perspective and the potential consequences of words traveling through a distorted network. They are acutely aware of the telephone game effect, where information degrades and twists as it passes from person to person, and they view the participation in this distortion as a violation of truth akin to lying. This often stems from a secure attachment style, where the individual does not need to destabilize others to feel stable themselves. They are grounded in a reality where people are complex, flawed, and deserving of the dignity of their own story, not the caricature created by a rumor mill. There is also a trace of Stoic philosophy in their makeup, a practice of focusing only on what is within their control, their own actions and words, while remaining indifferent to the actions of others, understanding that engaging in gossip is a surrender of one's mental autonomy to the behaviors of people who are not even present. They protect their mental environment with the same rigor that one might protect a physical home, refusing to let the mud of other people's lives be tracked across the clean floors of their consciousness. Ultimately, the decision to never gossip is an act of profound self-respect and a declaration of independence from the hive mind, a choice to build relationships on the bedrock of shared ideas, dreams, and vulnerabilities, rather than the quicksand of shared grievances. It requires a formidable strength to sit in the silence that follows a rejected piece of gossip, to endure the awkwardness of not laughing at a cruel joke, and to risk being labeled as boring or aloof by those who do not understand that this distance is actually a form of love, a love for the truth, for the absent party, and for the sanctity of the conversation itself. For those who encounter such a person, the experience can be transformative, a reminder that we always have a choice in how we use our voice, and that the most powerful thing we can sometimes say is nothing at all. If you are the person who holds the line, who refuses to tear others down to build yourself up, know that your silence is not empty. It is a structure of integrity that shelters everyone around you, even those who do not yet have the strength to build it for themselves. If you see yourself in this description, or if you aspire to be the kind of person whose silence speaks louder than words, liking this video helps us spread this message of integrity. Subscribe to join a community that values depth over drama, and please share your thoughts in the comments. How do you handle the pressure to gossip when it arises in your life? I read every story, and I'd love to hear yours. Thanks for your time, and until next time, keep elevating your mind.